I want to bring something up that was related to last week. Some side you brought up last week, and things we're talking about now. Was we all grew up in a time when being a geek, being a nerd, was a bad thing, right? You know what I mean? You had to keep it up.
It was a death sentence.
Yeah.
It's like if a girl knew we were watching, Doctor Who for the 50th time, forget it. You never get it.
Are you kidding? Now you have these fucking supermodels that are like, oh, I'm such a nerd. I watch Star Wars.
Yeah.
Shut up.
But yeah,
because they have a fucking Atari T-shirt on, but over their sculpted abs, and they're just like, oh, I'm such a nerd. I was watching Harry Potter.
A little bit of that nerd rage, and I have it a little bit, but I keep it in check. Like, you know.
No, you don't.
I do a lot. Like I don't.
Not when we go to the movies.
yeah. That. I mean, it's not like I don't begrudge them. I would never say to anybody, "Oh, you're not a real fan," because you only saw Matt, whatever his name's, Doctor Who. No, you're a fan. You're a fan.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, because I'm not a fan of the original Doctor Who. I didn't get turned on until Eccleston.
Right.
You know, but I love Doctor Who, but that incarnation of him, and I tried going back and. I tried watching the old stuff, and I just can't do it. I can't watch.
I can see that. It's
the white Formica sets and the fucking spaghetti strainer with a fake laser animated coming out of it.
Nickelodeon shows have a bigger budget than Doctor Who did.
Yeah, I could do that shit in my house.
But here's my topic. When we were growing up, being a nerd wasn't a big thing, right?
No, it was a bad thing.
Bad thing, right?
Yeah.
But look at all these movies in the 80s that were big hits that were right in our wheelhouse, and we never got credit. Like last week, we were talking about how nerds sort of like, and I feel like this, comic book fans, when a new superhero gets a TV show or a picture deal, he's going to be in it's like they're rejoicing, like Sally Field, oh, you like me, and it's like, and you said it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who likes it or what, right? But we never got credit for Terminator. We never got credit for Aliens. We never got credit for
Indiana Jones. But Indiana
Jones, you could say it's adventurous, but that was definitely in the wheelhouse.
Well, that's because we didn't create the shit.
No, but I mean, nerd culture now.
Keeping it alive. We kept it alive in the 80s and 90s until it was accepted.
No, but I'm talking about these big box office hits. People that would not describe themselves as geeky or whatever still went to Terminator in droves. Still went to see Aliens and said, "Oh,
they would downplay it as like, yeah, it was cool, but I'm not really into those that like sci-fi shit."
Yeah, like Star Wars. How big a hit was Star Wars?
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of weird when you look back and think about all the sort of nerdy things that were big pop culturally, but people never identify as a.
Yes, they were more considered like movie events.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like you said. Yeah, I agree with you. It wasn't like considered nerd culture, or people weren't thinking of all the nerds that worked on the movies behind the scenes for the special effects, or the technology. Yeah, it was.
Well, you know what it is. What it really comes down to.
It was just a summer blockbuster.
As far as nerds getting respected and nerd culture, the only real reason it's getting respected is because nerd culture generates all the money now.
Oh hell yeah! Yes.
That's where it all comes down to. It's not so much that people suddenly developed a respect for the source material or the filmmaking process or the actors or whatever. It's all because that movie made fucking $500 million.
Yeah, there is a weird thing.
That's all it is.
There's a weird thing with movies, especially I see it among comic book fans, to see how well the movie does its first weekend. What did you do Thursday night? What did you, and box office, maybe because Box Office Mojo, everything.
And that's because they're hanging their pride on this nerd stuff doing well, because that's the justification in America well, if it makes money, then it must be good, as opposed to it just being good no matter what it makes.
Right.
No, if I was a Hollywood producer, an executive, studio executive, I don't care how good, how much I love the source material. It's not making me money. It's not making me money.
That's the business end of it.
Right, that's how they think.
But in terms of the fans,
the accountants make more of the calls than the creatives do. The accountants crunch the numbers and they figure out, okay, well, Harry Potter makes a lot of money. We can do some more of those. Batman and Superman are popular. We can do some of those movies.
Oh, that's another thing I wanted to say about Warner Brothers. When we were talking about Batman vs. Superman, it reminded me of this. And I was shocked by this. The Midnight Edge guy said Warner Brothers is doing good business without the DC franchise.
Right.
Oh, of course, because Warner Brothers.
No, I mean I was shocked because when you look at like the biggest movies, you know what I mean? Like
but Warner Brothers is not just movies. Warner Brothers has music, books. That's what I think people don't understand. When people talk about Sony and Fox ruining the X-Men or the Fantastic Four, it's because Sony, Fox, and Warner Brothers, that's a huge corporation that has many media outlets, books, music, TV. Marvel Studios makes good superhero movies because that's all Marvel Studios does. They're owned by Disney, but they concentrate on the movie because Marvel Studios does not have a music division, a book division, a TV division. That's why the Marvel movies are better than Sony and Fox, because Sony and Fox treat those properties as product. That's it. Yeah. They don't think of it as like, this is our universe. They think of it as like a product to put out. How much are we going to make? How much profit we're going to make? That's it. Marvel Studios cares about Marvel movies. And that's why they're more successful.
And the thing is, if you really think about it, I mean, if you put fandom aside and your love of whatever the character is, the reality is, I think Patrick mentioned it, is that they have to make sure that these investors that put hundreds of millions of dollars, or tens of millions at the very least, which would accumulate to, $150 million, $200 million budget, they have to not only get that money back, but they have to turn a profit. So they can't just break even and expect to do more business with those people. Those people are going to pull their resources and fucking head for the hill.
You have to answer to the stockholders. Yes, yeah.
Well, those people have to make their money back. And maybe some of the fan base that kind of harps on the box office of a movie is excited about it because if the movie does well, then we'll get more.
I was just going to say that, Pete and Gary. I was going to say that because, I was thinking specific movies. Serenity, I loved.
Oh, did I? One of my favorites. I loved it.
And with Serenity,
that was a good movie.
I went to see Serenity the first day on 86th Street. You know that one on 3rd Avenue? The movie on 86th Street, and it was just me and a bunch of school kids, I think, that were just, there was nobody in the theater, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm never getting a sequel. And then John Carter was another one. I read the comics when I was a kid, and that made me read the books, and I I love that movie too. And it was forget it.
Serenity was a very rare thing, and it's what makes me such a fan of Joss Whedon. Is that the only reason that movie got any budget and got made was because of the fan outcry for it. People really made actual effort to reach out to the studios and online and use social media and so on and so forth to call out for that movie so they could get a finish to the canceled Firefly series.
Right.
Whedon he literally just made that movie for the fans that made it happen because nobody was asking for it. I mean, nobody in the studio was asking for it. Cameron didn't even plan on doing it.
I think maybe, you think Firefly got canceled, right? I think it was 9 episodes, and they added 3.
They never even ran the full season.
Yeah,
and they ran it out of order.
Right. So then when they saw the DVD sales, they must have been Firefly. What the hell is Firefly?
Right.
But Gab, like I said, I was one of those guys watching the box office of certain movies just for the just what Pete said. I wanted a sequel. I wanted a sequel to John Carter, and I wanted more Firefly.
Right. Okay, I could see that, but I think what I think you were trying to say at one point, it's like nerds or nerd fandom, they consider the box office success as
valuation of us.
Justifying, whether it's good. Like Star Wars made $1 billion, so it must be good. Not based on story.
I don't think
not based on story, but based on how much it makes. And there are people like that. I'm not saying all, but there are people that use box office to justify what they think is good.
Right. Yes, well, there's also there's degrees because there's a lot of people. Well, you could shifting out of movies for a second. Look at the average consumer. They will buy something that ends up being a piece of shit just because it has an expensive name and a price tag on it. They'll get Panasonic Electronics used to sell because they had developed the rep, and then the rep got them popular, and they started jacking up the prices, but their products got shittier and shittier and shittier.
Right.
But they still kept selling because they had already gotten that reputation. Same thing with Apple. Apple used to be the standard bearer for top quality, and now it's really not. You know, Samsung came along, and before they started creating phone grenades, they were really doing well. Then their phones started exploding in people's faces, so they kind of...
It still amazes me that got by, testing.
Their standards.
I know. Well, you figure they're testing it in a controlled environment, right? Maybe they're not.
They didn't test it on.
But even that, no,
they tested it on an airplane.
If you see,
they didn't, or they're not taking
testing,
it out. They're not having it in a book bag or a backpack, knocking it around.
They go worse than that, like product testing than that,
But I'm saying
I don't know, but somehow something happened between the product testing and releasing it to the public.
But it's like, sometimes people get, there's a certain amount of the customer buying base that thinks that because there's a big numerical figure attached to this certain thing, that it's got to be the best there is. And it could be just kind of an American thing,
Yeah,
so,
I don't know.
I could see that, I guess, yeah.
But, I mean, you think about it. Most people, they'll go and, I bought Versace glasses because they're fucking $500.
Right.
And they might not even protect you from the fucking UV rays of the sun, and you could buy a $36 pair.
That's just as good. Oh, yeah, that's all branding. That is. Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, eyeglasses, there's only, one way to blast sand to make it into glass. There's no difference between a Louis Vuitton eyeglass and a regular pair. It's only the brand. You're paying for the brand, the logo on it, really.
Right.
Adam Ruins Everything, that show on the internet that just got jumped to TV. They did an episode about glasses. And basically, one company owns everybody, and it makes it look like they're competing, but they're not competing. And
really?
That's why they're so expensive.
Oh, it's the same thing in the food industry.
Yeah.
You ever watch that documentary, Food Inc.? There's like 4 major corporations, and everything else is a subsidiary of those 4. Yeah. So, like, Boar's Head Ham and Townhouse and Hillshire Farms or whatever, they're all like from the same master company.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And there's what in the world? Isn't it? There was some article. There's not even 100 corporations in the world that control everything.
I know they're all buying each other out.
Isn't it like 20 or something like that now? Like Viacom is one of them.
I've been thinking about that. You know the idea of the megacorp that's been in science fiction since
Sure. They're here.
Are we seeing the birth of those things? I don't know. They're not right here.
They're here.
They're here. Yeah. We are living in the future.
If you want to follow
the megacorp is you work for the megacorp until they say you don't.
Right. Well, we've been watching the continual growth of a megacorp in the form of Disney, and then you have Viacom, which is another megacorp.
Absolutely, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
There are a couple that already exist. It's just that they've been able to go silent by hiding behind all the other smaller corporations that they buy.
Right.
Yes. But we are at the beginning stage of what Patrick said of working for the corporation,
absolutely,
consuming what the corporation puts out.
I remember...
Wendy, how long ago do you think the idea of the megacorp got introduced in science fiction?
William Gibson.
No, I think even way before that.
I was thinking Gibson too. But
I can imagine C.S. Lewis. I can imagine C.S. Lewis and those guys of the 20s and 30s. I'm sure they thought of mega corporations back then. I mean, I haven't read everything by like Alfred Bester or C.S. Lewis or Asimov.
Gibson is credited with creating cyberspace.
Hey Pat, you read a lot of Asimov, probably more than me. I mean, I'm sure he must have talked about mega corporation, or even
I don't think he talked about it in that way when Cyberpunk came out.
I mean, I bet you Arthur C. Clarke did. I bet you. I mean, Arthur C. Clarke was way ahead of everyone.
You'll have to look that up.
But I can imagine guys from the 20s and 30s. I'm sure they hated working for those corporations even back in the 20s and 30s, and they probably wrote stories about how awful it is to work for a corporation.
Corporations back then were nothing. The corporations back then are the equivalent of mom and pop stores compared to what we have now.
Oh, I mean, well, not all of them, but most of them. But you know what I'm saying? It's like they probably were thinking like 50 to 100 years in the future. Mm-hmm. This, Ford. Like Ford was the biggest corporation in the world in the 20s.
The term popularized by William Gibson.
There you go.
Mega corporation, really?
Yeah, he also coined the term cyberspace.
Yeah, that I knew.
and I believe referring to cyberspace as the Matrix.
But Pat, he coined the term, but was that the first time something like that was used?
I'm still reading. You chat among yourselves.
Yeah, okay, finally, keep reading. But,
Finally, we got rid of him.
But when you read Bradbury or Asimov or those guys of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they were talking about.
Dick used it. Thea von Harbo in Metropolis. Robert Heinlein, Citizen of the Galaxy. Robert Aspirin in the Cold Cash War. Andre Norton in the Solar Queen.
Andre Norton, yeah, she was a good
Philip
writer.
K. Dick, of course, was
paranoid,
Dream of Electric Sheep.
But Philip K. Dick was very anti-establishment, paranoid against,
absolutely.
authority.
68. I thought it was in the 70s.
But you figure when you think of a corporation, something like Philip K. Dick is thinking of a corporation as authority, and all his work is very anti-authority.
A megacorps is so powerful they can ignore the law and possess their own heavy armored, their own military, and hold sovereign territory, even act as outright governments. That was the thing in the megacorp. Is they might not be they might not have hold of everything, but they have like a campus, like Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
They,
and what's the one thing?
Seattle would be.
What about Disney?
And what's the one thing? And what's the one thing that's happened in the past 8 years about corporations?
What?
The court said corporations are people, and they could vote like people.
Oh yeah. That was the big magic trick where I think it comes down to the way the corporations are physically put on paper. There was some I cannot remember the specifics of it, but it's like they started putting our names on license plates and IDs in capitals, which basically tells the legal system that you're a corporation. Then they started listing the corporate names. They started typing them the way they used to type the average person's name. So legally, they show up listed as, they get recognized as non-corporations, as individuals or people. So it's a legal trick. It's literally just changing a font style.
Yes, yeah.
It's going from like capitals to sentence case.
Uh-huh. Okay, yeah. Oh, no, I agree with that, yes.
I can't remember. I don't remember it in detail. I watched it in a documentary probably 10 years ago. But I remember when I first got my worker. Well, what was it called? What's it called in high school where you get the chance to work? You need a permit at like 16 in order to get a job.
Learning permit. Oh no, working papers.
Yeah, or like working papers or worker's permit. And it was the first letter of your first and last name were capitalized and everything else was lowercase.
Uh-huh.
And that identified you in the legal system as a person, as an individual. And when the name was in caps, that meant that name was attached to a business or a corporation. And now it's been reversed. The lawyers of the world figure out how to flip that around so that our names are always in caps. And the corporation's names on their legal documents are in sentence case the way our names used to be. Something.
All right. Yeah, it's because by doing that, it changes the law. It
changes how taxes apply to them. That's why GE could get away with not paying $14 million in taxes, a couple of years ago.
Right.
Well, they also have teams of lawyers and accountants
working on that. Yes, the best of the best.
And they also have
That's the army that they have. They have armies of lawyers.
The business of America is business.
Yes, that's from Network.
My buddy's wife, she was an anthropologist, but everywhere she went to go study monkeys was some sort of uprising and people getting kidnapped. So they decided anthropology is not for her, so she became a lawyer. And one of the things she said while she was in law school constantly was, all these laws are written by business.
Sure.
Of course.
And you have lawyers writing government law now.
Yeah, but I mean, of course all the laws are written by business. I mean, our nation was founded by lawyers, basically.
Pretty much. It was founded by It was founded by slave owners who got tired of paying taxes in England.
Yeah, right. Exactly. The slave owners were businessmen.
Now that you think about it, not much has changed except for the clothing and the fact that we have internet. Because look at the fucking look at the government we got now.
Yeah, unfortunately, but I know, are we heading towards a dystopian future now? That's the thing. But here's the thing, guys. We've been recording for almost an hour and 20 minutes.
All right, I just want to say one thing, Gab, before I forget it. When you're talking about people bitching or whatever, there's a video on YouTube. I haven't watched it yet, and the title of the video is "Mark Waid doesn't get superheroes." And I was like, "Are you fucking insane?"
He's one of the best writers out there.
The guy's been in the business for what? How many years?
Yeah,
30 years.
For like 30 years. That's because he's very politically incorrect nowadays, Mark Waid.
I thought he was a social justice warrior.
I don't think he's that. I mean, he seems to have some conflicting ideas with some writers and
I remember when what's his name, Max, what's his name, tweeted out that he thought Ray was a Mary Sue. Mark Waid said, "Why are you taking this away from all the young girls?" And what's his name was, "What are you talking about? I'm not taking it away from anybody."
Wow. I remember. I don't remember Mark Waid saying that, but just recently there's a blogger friend of mine, and she wrote something about, dissent and with all this stuff going on with Trump and everything when he was elected president. And Mark Waid, she said that Mark Waid wrote her and said, "You shouldn't be stirring up trouble like this." This type of thing, which kind of makes me wonder, well, maybe Mark Waid's more middle of the road, like all of us.
Listen, what I mean, it's like, like Kamala Khan now is a symbol of the resistance. I don't give a shit. Like, when I read comics, I don't want to hear it. It's like, I'm reading Black Panther now, TNC Coates' thing, he came from Atlanta, and, like, it's good, and he's a good writer, and he's still got a lot to go, but you can see that he's getting it, you know what I mean? But one of the things he puts in is a lot of politics, and I'm like, Wakanda is a make-believe kingdom. It's a magical kingdom. You don't have to give it everything.
What? That's comics. Comics has always taken a political stance with each generation.
Not that close. Not that.
No, go back to the '60s. Even Stan Lee and a bunch of others pointed it out in some of those comic documentaries. They've always made a point of trying
they
to
build that
evolve,
up. They
evolve along with society. I mean, you had.
How many anti-Vietnam comics have you read?
Well, there was one called Nam. There was Captain America. You know what I mean? Oh no, Captain America maybe wasn't anti. You said anti.
And at the time, in the 70s,
but I think those 60s and 70s comics were more about social issues than
political.
Than being political. You know what I'm saying?
What about a little more modern? What about Mark Millar's take on the Ultimates? He was definitely political in the Ultimates. He had Captain America and Thor waxing political all the time.
Not at first. Captain America turned into a jerk later, yeah, and he did that thing with Thor, but he did it against S.H.I.E.L.D. Remember that the famous line, which I love, was like, I thought you wanted to save the world, and Nick Fury goes to Thor. He doesn't want to join the Ultimates. Nick Fury goes to Thor, and he said, "I thought you wanted to save the world." And Thor, "Yeah, from people like you."
Yeah. Comics has every right to get political as long as it's...
That's okay, but I don't think they're going to sell.
But see, I don't mind comics being political, but don't make that your agenda.
Right.
Every issue. Don't beat me over the head with it. Every issue.
Also, in the 70s, the 60s and 70s, they would do a political issue. It would be one issue.
Yes, like those Green Arrow, Green Lanterns. Yes,
absolutely.
those were political, but those were more social issues. But it was more like it was for a limited time. It went 12 issues, and then that was it. And then they moved on to something else.
Okay, Pete, by the way, Captain America did have an anti-Vietnam comic, and it was Gene Colan drew it, so it had to be pretty early in that run. And he went over to Vietnam. And he just found out that it was crazy.
Yeah, he was one of my instructors, Gene. So, yeah, I probably saw those pages and just don't remember.
Gene's one of my all-time favorites. Gene's in my top 5 artists of all time.
He was great as a teacher because when you didn't feel like teaching, we ended up watching Bullet, his favorite movie of all time. I saw Bullet.
He got in trouble by Stan Lee when he saw Bullet when it first came out. And Stan Lee, I think it was a Captain America script that was supposed to have a car chase. Yeah. And he drew like 8 pages of a car chase. In the comic, and Stan was like, "What the hell is this? We can't do this." So he always told that story. He loved Bullet. Yeah,
we saw that movie at least a dozen times in a fucking semester. Because he was like, "Okay, today I want to show you a movie that really shows the best way to tell a story and to sculpt images and to put your panels together and tell a story without dialogue." And everybody's like, oh, and he wheels out the fucking little stand with the big old TV on top and the VCR on the
I
bottom.
used to love when they did that when I was in grammar school.
And we're like, oh, here goes
Yeah,
fucking Bullet. But it was the same shit. It was Bullet every fucking time.
Right. But Pat, what you were saying about politics in comics, I mean, you're reading the Nick Spencer Captain America with Falcon.
Oh,
now,
absolutely.
Now, you're not enjoying that because I hear it's political. Every issue is about politics and...
They literally put Trump's words in the Red Skull's mouth.
See, that to me, that's way too obvious and too much beating me over the head.
Don't you think it's funny to say, to complain about Captain America being political? It's like, hello?
Not really. I'm a lifelong Cap fan. And he, he's a super... I mean, if you read those Golden Age stories, he wasn't fighting Nazis every issue.
Right. And to me, Captain America is not political because it's more about what the whole American dream, the American experiment, which... Yeah, it could get political, but it's really not.
It's unavoidable that it's going to get political. It's fucking Captain America.
But the foundation of the ideas are
political.
Well, the whole idea of American Dream is truth, justice.
John Byrne run wasn't political. Even Mark Grunwald, none of Mark Grunwald's, and he was on the book for like 90 years.
Yeah, I mean, Captain America's supposed to be stand up for an ideal, which isn't political to me.
Well, anytime you do like as Razor just said, if the Nick Spencer Cap was tilted to as far right as it was tilted to the left, there would be tar and feathers out waiting outside Marvel's office.
Wait a minute. Speaking of which, maybe you guys know. Didn't they pull some bullshit where Captain America has suddenly been a sleeper agent for Hydra for the last 75 years?
I'm reading that too, and I thought it would be stupid, but I'm telling you, Pete, it is good.
Yeah, really? He's raving about it. Yeah.
But it's really Steve Rogers, and it's not a clone, and it's not a chameleon.
No. And believe me, and it's not like we haven't seen this kind of heel turn before in other storylines. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because now he's WCW Hulk Hogan.
Right, but no, even different. And actually, Nick Spencer. I will say this about Nick Spencer: it's hard for me to get into the Falcon one because some of the things he does. But I don't know if he's a lifelong Cap fan or he's been researching Cap. He's bringing up stuff that I'm like, Nick, I'm the only guy that likes that. Why is this in this book? He's really... So we've seen the thing that did Captain America, and we've seen it happen before in the 70s. But it was on Sam Wilson instead of Steve Rogers. And remember that... I don't want to ruin it for you, but I mean, it made perfect sense.
Now you're going to make me go look for this, and I'm going to hate you.
I'm telling you, I'm reading it.
Well, how do I find? I'm gonna have to Facebook friend you so you can link me to what issue to look for, because now you got me curious, because I thought that was the most ridiculous heel turn, of them all. But if you're saying it works, now I want to check it out. I'm curious.
Oh, and not only does it work great, and it's like. And it really makes perfect sense. Take the greatest, who do all the Marvel heroes look up to?
Him.
Right.
Yeah.
And now you made the greatest hero in the Marvel universe the greatest villain.
Wow.
I'll say this about Nick Spencer. Nick Spencer swings for the fences every time he does, which means like every home run hitter, he strikes out a lot. And that could have been a big strikeout, but it's not.
Oh, okay.
Well, I know a place where I can find the comics. You just got to point me to the issue where it all begins, because
everything's a 6-issue arc. So issue 2, you find out. Issue 2 will tell you why he's like that.
And
all right, I remember the interwebs exploding over that. Remember what I say, Gary? Wait, this sounds like stupid and all that kind of thing. Yeah. But I'm not liking the Falcon as much. But he does pull in a lot of Cap lore, and I like that. I just wish he didn't get beat up by Misty Knight all the time.
What's funny is I mentioned
you didn't like
it
because of the politics that they do every issue.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this to Gary. Was it you that I said what's amazing about the Marvel movies is I love almost all the movies with maybe 2 exceptions, and even the 2 exceptions that I don't love, they're still okay. Like Ant-Man.
Right, yeah.
That was like.
Oh, wow.
But
we loved it. Pat and I loved Ant-Man.
Yeah, all the movies, their movies, I pretty much loved. They got my money. Whatever they put out, I'm there. But it's all the shit that I never read as a kid. I never liked Cap. I never liked Thor. I never liked the Avengers. I never liked Hulk or Iron Man. I only read them in passing. Like Iron Man, I read the Barry Windsor Smith run when they did Iron Man 2020. And Cap, I had literally less than a handful of issues, and I would see him when he would cross over into somebody else's title. And Thor, I only read it when Walt Simonson was doing it with the whole Beta Ray Bill saga.
Oh my God, that was
like the big mega arc that kind of stood the test of time. I was never a big fan of any of those titles. To me, that was all their B list. I was Spider-Man, Daredevil, X-Men. That was my shit. And and then Marvel takes all their B listers and makes them into these amazing billion-dollar movies. I mean, they took the Guardians of the Galaxy and made it into a fucking billion-dollar movie. And it's like, who heard of that? Who even thought of that shit? They were out when, in the 70s, the early 80s?
No, they just did a Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning did a whole space saga, starting with Invasion. And it grew out of that. And it was, how long did that go on? 10 years, Gar?
Oh, you would know better than I. I wasn't reading any of that
I
stuff.
don't know, I'm old. Everything condenses to me. But it was like, it started out with a 4-issue miniseries with Invasion, and it crossed over a couple of titles. They really invigorated Marvel space characters. And then Guardians of the Galaxy got their own book, and I think that book went 30-something issues.
But it felt like it started in like 2004, 2006, around there.
Yeah, so it was a big thing, So they were around, and it was critically acclaimed, and it was a cult hit. Not everybody read it, but the people that read it loved it, like me. A lot of what they did, Andy Lanning and Dan Abnett were on the screen.
But didn't it first come out in the 70s or 80s?
Yeah,
the original characters came out in the late 60s, early 70s.
Right, and then it disappeared. And then
Marvel Presents.
Yeah, like that Marvel Presents, Marvel Premiere book.
Yeah. And then it disappeared, right? And it disappeared in the 80s.
They were around a while. Remember they added like 20 million characters, and the guy was carrying around Cap Shield.
But in the 70s, they popped up, like Pete said, like every once in a while. They weren't big. They didn't have they weren't even in Marvel Premiere or Marvel Spotlight that much. Every few years, but
I remember them.
But Pete, like you were saying, they took all their B characters and
made them.
The
they made it into
mega because they sold the rights to all their A-list.
Yeah, see, that's it. So when you had the B-list characters, I think maybe you could do more with B and C-list characters because the expectations are kind of low. While Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man, you have to adhere to what they are and what they represent because they have so many years of being the premier books of their companies. You know what I'm saying?
What's funny is the B-list characters, their movies are infinitely more successful than the tentpole characters like the X-Men and Spider-Man. They're the most inconsistent film. Yeah, but they're the most inconsistent film series around.
Yeah, Guardians was 1969? Yeah, late 60s, early 70s.
Heroes, 18.
Yeah, I remember their second appearance was in Marvel 2-in-1.
Exactly.
Like
I remember that one. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, like The Thing and Guardians. It was like issue 2.
They did Guardians of the Galaxy, then they did Marvel 2-in-1, then they did Giant Size Defenders, then they did Captain America.
Wait, speaking of Guardians, I got a gripe possibly. I read recently that Marvel decided that Groot is Puerto Rican now.
What?
And I'm a big fan. I'll support any character that's Latino because there's maybe 5 of them in the whole fucking comic universe.
Yeah,
but
sure, yeah.
Groot, when did that happen?
When did they announce this? This is news to me.
There was an article I saw a couple of days ago that Marvel
was it in Vin Diesel's contract or something?
I have no idea because he's not Puerto Rican.
I didn't see that at all.
He's like Dominican and Italian or some shit.
But did you comment on that on your Facebook page, Pete? Because I didn't see it.
Yeah, it was articles. Do a search for it. So somebody.
Oh, really? Okay.
I was just like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
How does a tree from outer space become Puerto Rican?
I have no idea. He's from the planet Puerto Rico? I don't know how the fuck he's Puerto Rican. I was like, did he die? And then the first thing I thought of was, did he die and then get reborn in Puerto Rico? So now he's Puerto Rican. I was like, how the fuck did that happen?
Holy shit.
Guardians of Infinity. Oh, Guardians of Infinity.
No, wait, hold on. But Pete, do you think that's like forcing diversity?
Totally. Okay. Totally.
All right.
And listen, I'm always blowing the whistle for diversity in comics, especially there's a horrible lack of Latino characters, just like, and an even worse lack of, an even more dramatic lack of Asian characters.
You know, that Asian thing always bugs me too, because I go to Artist Alley and I see Asian guys, you know, artist wise, and somehow, you know,
They're not represented at all. Dude, what are the Asian characters that are out now? I mean, the Atom was Asian, and then they fucking got rid of him and brought back the original one.
no, that Adam's back.
Oh, the Asian one?
Yeah, the Asian one's back. They're doing Justice League of America. Steve Orlando, you know, the guy that he's the openly gay guy. So the Ray is coming back. Remember the Ray they introduced? Joe Quesada did the art, and Christopher Priest wrote it. So he's gay now.
Well, there are more gay characters in Spanish or Asian.
Are there?
Pretty much.
Really? Yeah, I think more Asian. I never noticed the Spanish.
There's
part
I
of
mean,
it.
I'm sure if we really thought about it or looked, it wouldn't take long to find all the Asian characters in between
Kyle
both companies.
Rayner is half Mexican, so he gets it.
Oh, right, because they always talk about that in the comics.
Yeah, like, I mean...
That's like Ultimate Spider-Man being half Spanish, but it never... The only thing that's Spanish about him is his last name.
Or the new Power Man is both, and nobody talks about Spanish with him. But the White Tiger, she's Spanish. Blue Beetle is Spanish.
Two.
Guardian the Ghost Rider, Robbie Reyes, he's Spanish.
Right. 3.
Who else is Spanish?
Come on, only... There's, 1,500 characters in Marvel?
Oh,
6,000?
6,000.
I don't know. Does she count it all? Renee Montez. She was
the cop, right? Isn't she a cop?
She was a cop, but she was the question for a little while.
Montoya, I thought her name was.
Renee Montoya, right?
Yeah, she
was cool. I liked her a
gay
lot
too.
Yeah, and it's the thing is, I don't
liked
want
her better
Spanish...
as the question than Vic Sage.
The thing is, I don't want Spanish characters in comics just to fill the status quo. It's just like find something for them to do that's worthwhile. That isn't just about being, let them be more than just Spanish. But I mean,
right? Yeah,
show them
like that.
Because there would be, when I was a kid, whenever I saw when I discovered George Perez, I was like, oh shit, a Latino is drawing comic. And it was something that nobody in my family took seriously. I was like, wow, that was a big deal to me. That really inspired me to really push it as a comic artist and to get into it, just because I saw a Spanish name on Teen Titans.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, and you read about it all the time. A lot of the black creators, when they started seeing black characters or black writers or black artists, it inspired them. It's like, oh, I can do that too. Because if you don't see it, when you're white, everybody is white, and you're brought up thinking you should be able to try and do everything. But when you're not, when you're black or Spanish or Asian, you don't grow up thinking you can do everything because you're told you can't. So when you start seeing your kind, so to speak,
I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you're told you can't, but you're not told you can.
Yeah, well, it's kind of it's kind of the same thing. It's just
a little different, but yeah. But one of the things I always point out, in the 70s, most people think the 70s was much more racist than now. But Marvel had Brother Voodoo, Blade, Black Panther,
Sons of the Tiger, White Tiger.
Yeah, he was Latino.
But Sons of the Tiger was a black and Asian.
Right. But I mean, really superheroes. They were.
And that was and Marvel had way more diversity.
And they had black, and they had a couple of black artists. I know that.
Yeah. And the only Asian character was Master of Kung Fu.
Let me see.
Mantis, even though that's a...
Mantis, Mantis.
Not the greatest example, but she was
Asian. I like Mantis.
What?
I like Mantis. I'm trying to think who else.
People are complaining that she was basically a space prostitute when Steve Englehart brought her in. That whole Asian prostitute thing.
Oh, the Asian...
Because that's what she did. Didn't she hit on everyone in the Avengers? I mean...
Wow.
Wouldn't you?
What?
Wouldn't you?
Well, I'm like Pete. I never read the Avengers. They were all B-listers to me.
Yeah.
Wait, you told me you were a Defenders fan.
I was. I love the Defenders.
Yeah, but after Hulk and Namor left, those guys were Z-listers.
Well, that's it. When those guys left, so did I. You see, I didn't keep it.
Oh, okay.
I like the book for the characters, not for the name. You know?
Yeah. But you know what? It is true. To give Marvel their credit, they did have a more diverse universe than DC did back then.
In the
DC had-
70s, in the 70s you had the Black Green Lantern, John Stewart.
Yeah,
You
Black
had-
Lightning.
What? Yeah, Black Lightning. Didn't the Legion of Superheroes have a couple of
Tyrock, and
They had aliens, so they were kind of diverse, but people were like green and orange and purple and shit.
No,
Well, yeah, I'm
but
thinking
they had a black guy called Tyrock, and he had like he was like Banshee. He could,
right.
get sonic powers.
And then
But
they
he
had,
had supposedly the guy with the worst costume ever too.
yes. Oh, is that white one with all the cutout circles?
Yeah, and the pixie boots.
Yes. Oof.
Wow.
What else?
It was
in
worse
the
and worse
80s,
than
they
Luke-
had the Invisible Kid in
Worse
Legion
than Luke
become-
Cage's
was a
tiara
black
and
man.
disco shirt.
But who else? Who else in the 70s in DC? I'm trying to think. Well, what was it? Black Manta was black.
Oh, what's his name? Teen Titans. Yeah, but we didn't know he was black
Oh.
until the 90s.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but I
That's 'cause they
always thought
decide.
they kind of hinted at it. Even though
In
Spider-Man...
Teen Titans, there was a couple.
Yeah,
Bumblebee,
Bumblebee.
and there was Mal Duncan, who was he had like 9 identities. I couldn't get him straight. He was Hornblower, he was Guardian, he was somebody else.
Oh, okay. And then there was also a Batman villain called the Spider. I think he was supposedly black.
But that's another thing. Black villains are really, diversity in villains is a tough thing too.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, oh, why is he got to be a black guy? Or why is he got to be Hispanic? Then
Well,
people start
But it's like, female here in the 70s, female heroes for all
But I think,
women and all that kind of.
but in the 70s, it didn't feel forced the way it does now. Am I wrong, Pete, or what do you think?
the thing is, we would have to go back to those comics and reread them and see, because we're looking at it as kind of in a nostalgic way. You know what I mean? The mindset of the 70s is completely different to now.
Yeah,
Okay,
because,
I just reread. I'm reading Black Panther's epic trade, and it starts with the FF story that put him in there, and then it goes to the 1970s Jungle Tales Don McGregor thing. And let me see, does it feel forced? It definitely feels like weird in terms of reading comics today and going back to the 60s. Like Black Panther goes to the FF and beats them up and says, I need you to help me defend my country. You just beat them up.
Right.
Why the hell would you need them?
Yes. Why would you get people you just beat up?
yeah, exactly.
So that, and then they have like all this thing, and that was flying car, and they would say, oh my God, where'd you get this flying car? But the 70s, I'm trying to think what the 70s
But see, I
was
didn't
like.
think like introducing a black character in the 70s was a big deal. It just felt like a black character showed up.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
think
like,
I
oh,
think-
here's Brother Voodoo. Okay.
I
It
think
was
Also,
like-
then the
it
For
wasn't
first
a
like
kid,
that.
you don't think that way. You don't
Yeah,
think it
'cause
as
you
an
weren't-
agenda driven.
Yeah, when I was growing up reading comics, it wasn't like, it's weird to say, but it's kind of like I wasn't reading them thinking, wow, there's no black or Latin characters.
Latinos,
It's just
yeah.
like when I saw a Latino name or a Latino character, it was a big deal to me because you didn't expect it because everybody's always been white.
Right.
You know,
But I mean,
it's like-
when I was reading
look
comics...
at how hard we have to start. Not how hard, but you actually have to stop and think about the ethnic characters. Where the white characters, you could rattle them off without a second thought. You could rattle off 50 of them in 5 minutes if you had
But
to.
a lot of my friend bet me one time I couldn't name 1,000 comic book characters, and I did.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to
Nerds.
think 95% of those characters go into comic book limbo. You know what I mean? They get created, they go boom. They get created, they go boom.
Yeah.
But I mean, one thing I really wanted to do some, but I'm a scaredy cat. Do some posts on diversity in comics. And one of the things I want to say is sales matter.
Oh, heck
Sales
yeah.
matter. The reason Luke Cage Power Man went from Power Man to Iron Fist and Luke Cage and Iron Fist Comic 2 is they weren't selling.
Mm-hmm.
The cat. I just looked up. Remember that comic?
Yeah.
Beware the Claws of the Cat.
Yeah.
Wally Wood. Oh God, I was looking at the art. It's gorgeous. But I didn't realize a woman wrote that and another woman drew it.
Yes.
It lasted 4 issues.
Yeah. And that wasn't made a big deal. But that wasn't made a big deal, though. It was like...
No, because there wasn't comic press. Nobody was paying attention. But
with the sales thing, that is a very valid point. You had more white readers buying comics back then than any other culture,
Sure.
which is, of course, changed. I mean, you go to Midtown Comics, you go to almost any comic shop, the demographic is dramatically different than it was when I was a kid.
Yeah,
But
I would say so.
part of that change is because those
What are they buying?
cultures. Yeah, well, part of that change is because those cultures started showing up in the media. You know what I mean? Like, black people bought black media, Spanish people bought Spanish media. Asians
Not really.
bought
Go back to the
Asian
geek
media.
thing.
No?
You know, one, you couldn't have. I don't think there was ever a comic book store ever in a black neighborhood. There's one, but
No, they wouldn't be comic book stores because comics are everywhere. You just went to the Optimo or the Bodega or the
comic
pharmacy.
stores in New York didn't start
Bought
appearing
them,
until the late
and they
70s.
were you just went to a newsstand and you bought whatever comic.
Right. Yeah.
But what I mean by big deal, yes, there wasn't a press and whatever back in the 70s. But Pat, when you were reading comics in the 70s, like I was saying, when the Sons of the Tiger or White Tiger showed up in Spider-Man or Marvel Team Up, it was more like, oh, okay, White Tiger's a cool character. Sons of the Tiger are cool. Me and my friends didn't say, oh, wow, that's a cool Asian character, or that's a cool black character, or that's a cool Latino character. We just thought,
but we had a different mindset.
We just thought they were cool because they just showed up, did what they had to do, and leave. There was no agenda behind it.
You know what might be a thing? We were talking. This just occurred to me. We were talking about earlier. We talked about how geek culture, being a geek, was a bad thing. So when you were a geek, you were a minority. So maybe that brought about some empathy for minorities because you knew what it felt like to be isolated,
but also
and push it to a corner.
Say you're growing up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
You're a young black kid. Would you want to be labeled a geek in Bedford-Stuyvesant in 1975?
No, I grew up in the projects in Brownsville and then in East New York, and it's like anybody who was into comics, it was a thing you had to keep secret. It was like a dirty secret.
Absolutely, yeah.
Until you found somebody else who was into comics, like, oh shit, here we go.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like
when me and my friends got together, we didn't make a big deal over the minority or Asian or Latino characters.
That's because you were technically a minority because you were a comic geek. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess I could see that. I could see that. Yeah, sure.
If you think about it, in comparison to the rest of society, back then it was more like jocks, goths, druggies, stoners, geeks. You know what I mean? It was kind of like those were the subcultures.
You mentioned everything Gary was in 1982.
He was almost those.
But I'm just saying, it just felt like there was no agenda over the Sons of the Tiger appearing in Marvel Team Up. Mm-hmm. Like, at least because we may not have any comic press, but it just felt like more of a natural, organic introduction to the characters. It didn't feel forced to me.
Yeah.
Also, guys, Gary and I both said the reason we became Black Panther fans was this. Tell him, Gary.
Because it was written by Don McGregor and drawn by some great artists.
Because remember I said the reason I'm a Black Panther fan today is because I thought his costume was cool in the 70s.
See, and I was like because of Don McGregor and those guys writing and drawing it. But yeah, his costume was cool. The costume had a large part with liking characters. That is true.
Yeah, that's probably goes for most characters. I mean, with the exception of the Jack of Hearts, which I loved, but that is the fucking worst costume I think ever.
That's the best costume.
And listen, when I decided to do my
drawing that costume every
panel? I did. I decided to do a tribute piece with Jack of Hearts and Rom Space Knight because I had a nostalgia fit a couple of months ago, and the Jack of Hearts costume took fucking hours. I was like, and then I started reading up on it, and they were talking about that one guy. I can't remember the guy's name, George something or other, who did the Jack of Hearts.
George Freeman.
You got to give that guy props because he drew that costume in almost every panel. And then I read something where
Sal Buscema had to draw it, the whole
they were saying that artists were complaining because they didn't want to work on that character because he was too fucking complicated. It took forever to do a page with him. If you had him grabbing a coffee cup and setting it back down, that was like 6 panels going to take you a fucking day.
Yeah, that is true.
I thought the same thing was going to happen to the Cap costume when he came back from Dimension Z. It was like more military, and he had like the
buckles and straps and
the honeycomb things, and I thought I thought nobody's going to draw, and nobody did draw it.
Yeah.
John Romita Jr. was doing the book. He didn't draw it. Cassidy was doing Uncanny Avengers. He didn't draw it.
You know the same. You know, from what I heard,
mean the chainmail?
The chain.
I thought
there was
everyone
something.
had a drawer, like when
No,
Joe Quesada made that like an edict.
You know, the same thing goes for Spider-Man. There was something I was told by a guy who I won't name who worked in Marvel for a couple of years, and he said, Spider-Man is you have to know how to draw buildings, and
Yes.
you have to know how to draw that webbing the right way in every panel.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's so much work in doing a Spider-Man page because everywhere he's in Manhattan all the time. So he's swinging around and you're drawing hundreds and hundreds of windows in every fucking panel. It says Spider-Man became like a punishment for artists. When they were like,
Wow.
if they were doing a book and if they were slow, it was like, oh, sorry, you didn't hand in X-Men on time. We're going to put you on Spider-Man. It's like, no!
Wow, I never heard that.
Yeah,
I
heard-
emailed this
I heard
costume
a couple
to
of
you.
times
Will
afterwards.
you
Wow,
get
because
it?
that's strange because Spider-Man usually had long runs by artists. You know,
And-
Romita,
yeah.
Gil Kane, Ross Andrew.
Yeah, well, no, I'm saying as the years went on, kind of think of it. Another little Spider-Man story was, what's his name that started Image? One of the guys that started. He used to draw Spider-Man.
Eric
What is
Larson. Eric Larson.
No. That he created Spawn.
McFarlane.
Oh,
McFarlane. One of the reasons McFarlane sort of innovated the crazy wild webbing with all the strands,
Yes.
and he essentially innovated drawing Spider-Man's costume fucked up all the time because he got tired of drawing those webs over and over again. So he started drawing Spider-Man's costume getting more and more damaged as stories went on. But he would have to draw those webs over and over again, and then it just became a thing.
the
It became
the
became a style.
underarm webs came and went a lot.
Because it was
Yes.
extra webbing you had to draw, and you had to draw it the right way every single time. Spider-Man's webbing on his costume falls in a certain way.
Yes.
It has
But
to
see,
be that
that-
way every single time.
But see, that shows you the way between a good artist and well, McFarlane's a good artist, but you know, like there are guys like Ross Andrew that never skimped on detail on his Spider-Man run, and he was on the book for 5 years.
But
you know.
also, you have to factor
And then
in.
you figure guys like McFarlane are like, oh, I don't want to draw all this webbing every month, and then you start tearing the costume because they're
But also,
They
you have
don't
to
have
factor in.
professional-
Remember, there's a schedule that has to be kept.
yeah.
They have to.
but
If they
again,
don't
I
stay
mean,
on schedule,
like I'm saying, Ross Andrew, Gil Kane, those guys never missed a deadline.
this is true. That is true.
You know, when
back in the
Gene
days,
Colan
what
died,
about-
speaking of professionals, when Gene Colan died, do you remember? He drew, somebody was saying that when he drew Captain America and Daredevil, he was on the book out of 84 issues. He drew 83 out of 84 issues of Daredevil in a row
well,
without
what
ever
about,
taking a break, without never missing a deadline,
How
because
was
he was
he
a
on to
consummate
Dracula?
professional.
What is it? Even though I hate John Byrne with a fucking passion,
Really?
that guy. I can't stand that
Really?
fucking.
Oh, wow.
ass.
But he did 2 or 3 books a month.
At one point, I think he was doing 6.
I mean, I remember he was doing Avengers, X-Men, and Marvel Team Up at one point.
Yeah, and according to I think he was like drawing 3 and writing 3 or something like that. Because at one point he was doing Alpha Flight, he was doing X-Men, he was doing
No, I think
Superman, a bunch of shit. But him and George Perez were like the 2 powerhouses because Perez was doing
Right.
Perez was doing 2 or 3 books with monstrous detail, and according to the rumor mill, and again, this is the pre-internet era, so this is all stuff that was told to me in a comic book club in high school by people who came from Marvel to come talk to us in the comic book club. But they were saying that the story used to be that Byrne was jealous of Perez because of his popularity, because of all the books he did with such a high detail quality, and he was kind of like chasing Perez's heels to become as popular and started taking on more and more books just to spite Perez, which sort of made Perez.
See, to me,
Really? See,
a lot of-
wow. See, because I think Byrne was on the biggest book in the Marvel universe in
Yeah.
the late 70s, early 80s.
X-Men was king.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
but
then he
you
was
also-
drawing Marvel
but-
Team Up,
but-
which had Spider-Man, which was a big seller.
Yeah, but you don't never underestimate an artist's ego.
Yeah.
And again, this is all back in the he said she said days. Who knows how true it is? There is also a story with John Byrne where he would use I think it was Marvy markers or some kind of, I forget the markers he used to color his stuff. And because he's colorblind, he would label them. So he did a cover of Power Man and Iron Fist that's supposed to be legendary, where Iron Fist's costume is brown and yellow instead of green and yellow, because to get back at him for being an asshole, somebody switched the labels on his brown and green markers.
Oh man!
Oh man!
So he just colored Iron. That's why Iron Fist has a yellow and brown costume. And I can't. I don't know where you'd have to. I don't know how you would research that now.
But the thing is, guys like Perez and Byrne are professionals and doing 3 books a month, and Tom McFarlane is complaining about doing webbing.
But I mean, go back and look at some of the things. Like like I said, I'm reading this Epic collection. The panels we get now are so much more intricate and detailed, I think.
Well, the coloring is more superior. Is far superior, and the production is superior. But I feel that the storytelling was stronger and infinitely more clearer back in the 80s. Like,
I do complain about artists and their storytelling a lot.
Yeah, most of them know how to draw really flashy, beautiful shit now, but you could not tell what the fuck was going on if it wasn't for the word book.
Yeah, I call them pinup artists.
Yes. Yeah, and that's completely contrary to the whole point. Comics is called sequential art. That's the original. That's originally what it was. That's what Will Eisner preferred calling it, sequential art form. So you're telling a story through a sequence of panels. If you're not doing that, you're not doing your job right.
And look at someone like Bendis. I mean, most of his books are just talking heads. There is no storytelling in a Bendis story, it seems.
That's because Bendis is a talking head. Bendis never shuts up. Ever seen him? Ever heard him on a podcast or what?
Uh-huh.
What was that
theory why there's all this talking in comics and there's very little fighting is these guys, when they grew up, never got into a fight in their life.
Right. They just talked their way out of it.
Yeah, or they ran away. And now they're writing comics and all the characters are snarky.
Yeah.
This is stuff that they wanted to say to the person back then but never got the chance.
Right, to the guy that could have kicked their ass. Now they're creating a character that the hero can beat up who's an echo of some bully they never got out of their head.
Oh, you want to hear a revenge story? On Reddit yesterday, there was a story about a Japanese guy who was bullied when he was in Cub Scouts, whatever. And for 30 years, he would collect garbage, put it in boxes, and mail it to the bullies and give some random address as the return address.
Really?
He would put full diapers and underwear for 30 years.
And what, did he get caught?
I guess he was caught. I didn't read the whole article. I just kind of skimmed it.
That's hysterical.
I tell you what, I can't
imagine holding a grudge for 30 years.
He made that bully his life.
Jesus.
Bullies plural.
I honestly couldn't tell you the name of one person that bullied me, and there might have been in my entire life when I was a kid. There might have been 3, and that's growing up in the ghetto. You know what I mean? That's growing up where everybody was a fucking bully. Everybody had the potential to be a bully. I can't even remember. Right now, I can't remember the name.
Gary Esposito, and I cry myself to sleep tonight.
Well, you should.
All right, guys. I've been recording this for 1 hour and 54 minutes, and that's not even consider. I didn't even record all the Sigourney Weaver talk in the beginning. I started recording after that. I missed a good opportunity. So we've been talking for over close to 2.5 hours, and this is a 2-hour phone call that I'm probably going to have to split up into 2 pieces if I'm going to put it online.
I think.
So do you think maybe we should just wrap it up for this week? We covered a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But wrap it up. I wanted to say I can't find that Groot article on your Facebook timeline.
I'll look for it.
I think it's the video game.
Oh, okay. But
Guardians of the Infinity. It says Groot's got Puerto Rican roots in Guardians of the Infinity. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, that must be it.
Pete, do you want to give a shout out to your website and what you do? We never talked about what you do for a living. And
I'm a freelance artist. I'm working on my own graphic novel called War Dogs. It's Asian.
Jack of Hearts.
It's the first. Yeah, Jack of. I'm going to bring back Jack of Hearts. But working on a graphic novel, you can go to, or you can find me on Facebook, Pete Hernandez III. You can go to companymancomic.com. And from Facebook, I can link everybody because I don't have a wardogs.com set up yet. I still have to build that.
Right, and you're doing commissions now? Is that what you saw?
I'm always doing commissions. I did Morticia Adams recently.
That was terrific. I just saw that yesterday, and that was terrific.
Thanks. I did, I do portraits, logos, CD covers, book covers, character design, whatever, really, whatever. I've done product design and technical layout. A lot of the stuff I can't even show online because you have to sign NDAs.
Yeah.
They don't want.
And what's your website?
The guy that used to come into Gary's comic store that did commission portraits of dogs, and I didn't realize, I'm looking online, that is big. People want people to draw their dogs so they can hang it up.
Who knew?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I also have another website, www.goofysnacks.com. That's G as in Gary, OOF as in Frank, EESNAX.com. That's another art site that I have.
And what's the best way to reach you? Goofy Snacks or your other website?
Either or. They both have email links, where you can just get a hold of me.
Okay.
You know what? I heard about a website today, Brooklyn and Manhattan.
Uh-huh.
Brooklyn Manhattan one, and a guy reviews public bathrooms you can use. He gives you the spot where it is and how clean and stuff it is.
I heard of that.
Pat, do you have anything to push?
Yes.
No. All right. You just wanted to say something snarky one last time.
Yeah.
But, so this is what I'm going to do.
I have this. I just want to say, Hail Hydra. Get on Team Cap.
I knew it. I knew you were no good.
So the thing is, this is going to be a free-form podcast every week. Maybe next week we'll keep it to an hour. It's not going to be weekly, Pat. Pete and I were talking. It's like some days we'll have something to do, so we're not bound to doing it every week.
Well, what if we do this? What if we do sort of who's available? So one week it'll be you and Gary. Next week
right.
Us, then it'll be the three of us again, and then it'll be three of us again. Then it'll be me and Gary. That kind of thing.
Oh, you want to do that?
Yeah. Also, one of the things I think.
See, I'd rather keep it to the core three of us and invite other people in at some point.
Yeah, because you know what? We're eventually going to develop a rhythm. A more cohesive rhythm where we're not on top of each other, and then if you keep switching that lineup up, that person is just going to start vocally bumping into you a lot.
Right, but I would like to get some interaction.
That's why I feel that this went so long. Was there was three of us talking, trying to get enough points in.
Yeah,
and you have to pause and all that. Like I think that made it longer than a 2 minute.
I think so too. But I mean, we could have stopped it at any time. But I think also what I always hate about podcasts that are pre-recorded. Mm-hmm. Is that, like I think we were saying earlier, it's like, you're listening to it and somebody has something totally incredibly wrong. And you can't correct that person. That podcast is now engraved in stone. And that's misinformation.
That'll get people talking, and then they'll contact us and yell at us. You asshole, that comic came out in 82 and Terminator came out in 85.
Well, I just think maybe interacting is better than I don't know. We'll talk about it some more.
I'll play it by ear. I don't think we don't even know what this is yet.
Exactly.
Right now, it's people talking.
Right now,
I think it might be better if Pete and I did all the talking and Gary sat there.
Gary, you push record. You push record.
I am going to block your phone call, Pat, your phone number.
We should edit out that huge tirade Gary went on.
Hey guys, I'm in charge of editing this, so don't
James
piss
Cameron,
me off. I'm in charge of editing this, so don't piss me off. I'll cut you out.
James Harrison, don't tell the hack that never.
James Cameron is going to be taking the easy way out by going and rebooting a franchise that people love and might hate him for it.
I didn't say hate him for it. I'm saying what he's doing is lazy.
No, but it's not. That's totally not lazy. It's actually he's taking a huge chance.
No, we'll talk about this forever, but no, it's not. I'm sorry. I didn't see Michelangelo going back and doing another version of the Sistine Chapel. He did it once and he moved on.
That's because that shit took so fucking long.
Yeah, but he didn't rest on his laurels. He did other stuff afterwards.
That's because it took too goddamn long to do the Sistine Chapel.
He could have rested his laurels after he did the Pieta, for God's sake, or David.
Listen,
he didn't.
The Sistine Chapel was a work for hire, so
it was.
He doesn't even own
He didn't
that,
go back
man.
to it, but he didn't go back to it.
He was just a cheap whore that just did it for the money of the king.
You know, he probably did, because back in that day, you're probably dirt poor as an artist. So
Dude, not for nothing. If you really stop and look at all the great artists that everybody
it was all work
loves,
for hire.
it's all free. That's freelance.
Yeah, exactly.
They were commissioned by kings to do these paintings. The Mona Lisa is fucking freelance. He had to paint this ugly chick who I think was originally.
But I didn't see, Leonardo cranking out tons of Mona Lisas, and for the rest of his life.
Yeah,
he did that, and they moved on.
Well, it was a work for hire. You don't go back and redo a work for hire.
Well, we just said the Terminator was a work for hire because he only wrote and directed it. He didn't produce it, so he didn't own it.
But he got to create the whole thing his way.
No, but it was still a work for hire.
But he was given the free reign to create it. It's still his thing.
No, it's not. He doesn't own it. He does not own it.
Well, tell me who the owner is.
Probably whoever the studio was that put out the movie.
You don't know.
They have the trademark. They have the copyright. They have the likeness rights. I'm sure.
Who is this mysterious they?
The studio. Whoever put out the first Terminator movie.
You go find out who owns it, and you shut your mouth until you find out.
You shut your chin slit. You find out. All right.
His wife.
What? Catherine Bigelow owns that shit.
No, it's the other chick.
The other one. The other chick I said.
Yeah, she probably has bank. She probably
Gail Ann Hurd or whatever.
So, good
wow,
for her.
Legendary Pictures is doing Dune over?
Yeah, again, because we need more of the same shit over and over and over again.
Yeah, but it's by that good director who did Arrival.
Dennis Villeneuve.
Villeneuve.
And I know the first Dune movie sucked, and I never saw the Sci-Fi Channel adaptation.
I thought the Sci-Fi Channel was decent, good. I liked it.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
And I read all those books.
It actually was pretty good. It was definitely more detailed.
Okay, so I don't know. Maybe they just want to get a bigger audience for it. I don't know.
Who the fuck knows?
Exactly.
It's still too big of a story to put in one movie.
I honestly feel now in movie studios are looking for franchises.
Mm-hmm. Everything. Well, they've been doing that.
I could see Dune being a trilogy, probably.
Kind of think of it.
But you got to remember, Dune, God Emperor of Dune, Children of Dune, Chapter House of Dune.
Kind of think of it. That's a good topic for next time. Which franchise gave birth to the franchise industry? Because everything is there is. I don't know if it's Star Wars or Die Hard or Halloween or whatever, but there is a film somewhere that is credited with being the film that started the franchise of movies. Because at one point in time, like in the 70s and 80s, whatever, movies just came and there was just one and that was it.
But
Godzilla.
Wait a minute. Yeah,
Not only did Godzilla have franchise, but they had crossover. Rodan.
But Godzilla did a lot. But also, do you consider like a franchise like there was King Kong, and then there was Son of Kong. Same thing with Rudy Valentino. He was like the Latin lover. Then there was the son of the Latin lover. Do you consider those franchises or just sequels? So it's like
I guess movies that connect within the same universe with the same character. I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting.
All right, that's a good idea, Pete. That's a discussion for next time. I would like to talk about that because I think that's a lot more spirited than talking about movie gossip myself. So
yeah, because it's also something that doesn't get discussed a lot as far as like the origins of it. Because at one point, there were no film franchises. Films were just one and done.
Yeah, that's true. So
they always had sequels. They always thought sequels. You know what I mean? But it didn't, like you said, no shared universe. They didn't look at them like, all right, we need 7 movies out of Rocky.
Yeah,
we need what else? The sequel.
But then you could say King Kong's a shared universe because. What's his name? The hunter in the first King Kong movie. Mm-hmm. Didn't he go back to Skull Island and he found Kong?
Yeah, but that's a sequel. That's not so much.
But it used the same character. I mean, so is that considered? I mean, if that's a shared universe,
we have to figure out what is considered a franchise. Is it 3 movies? Isn't that basically what a franchise is?
Or is it just one with the same characters?
I don't know,
because as a sequel? Is a sequel considered part of a franchise?
Because what about Bond? Like Bond has 25, 26 movies?
Yeah, that's definitely a franchise.
To me, Bond is a franchise, while Star Wars to me is more of a brand. And I'll explain what I mean next week.
Okay. Did you stop recording, or are you still going?
No, I'm still recording this nonsense.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Sleep tight.
Yeah, have a good night. And
Good night,
I'll talk to you
darling.
guys soon. Peace
Okay.
out.
Bye.
Take care.